Okay folks, buckle up, because exclusively for you, we're cracking open a military idea that sounds like sci-fi but isn't. Time as a weapon. Not time travel, time control. Get ready for a wild ride. When time became classified. What if time isn't just something we measure anymore, but something that's managed? Not by philosophers, not by physicists, but by the military. Buried inside declassified strategy papers and defense doctrine are phrases that sound harmless at first glance. Time dominance, temporal advantage, decision time superiority. They don't talk about weapons, they don't talk about borders, they talk about when things happen. Because modern conflict isn't about who has the biggest force, it's about who acts first, who reacts last, and who controls the gap in between. Military planners now describe time the same way they describe airspace or territory, something you can enter, deny, compress, or dominate. And once time becomes an asset, the outcome of a conflict can be decided before anyone realizes it has even begun. Because whoever controls time controls the ending before the story starts. Okay, so quick reality check. And no one is freezing time or bending space-time like a sci-fi movie. This is about language, doctrine, and mindset. But that's what makes it interesting. When institutions change how they talk about something, it usually means they've already changed how they use it. And time? That's a pretty big thing to quietly reframe. Time as a battlefield. For most of human history, time was neutral. It passed the same for everyone. Armies marched, battles unfolded. Whoever had better numbers or better weapons usually won. That changed quietly in the 20th century. Modern military doctrine began to realize something unsettling. You don't need to overpower your enemy if you can outpace them. You don't need more force if you can act sooner. This idea crystallized in something called the OODA loop: observe, orient, decide, act. Developed by US Air Force strategist John Boyd, it became the backbone of modern warfare. The goal wasn't destruction, it was disruption. If you can cycle through decisions faster than your opponent, you don't just win, you make their choices irrelevant. This led to concepts like time compression warfare, shortening your decision cycles while stretching the enemy's, creating confusion, forcing reaction instead of action. And military thinkers began talking openly about winning before the enemy knows the war has started. Not through secrecy alone, but through speed. By the time the opponent understands what's happening, the outcome is already locked in. Weapons still matter, territory still matters, but they are secondary, because the real battlefield is now temporal. Who gets information first? Who decides first? Who acts before the other side can even orientate themselves? In this framework, time isn't a background condition anymore, it's a domain, something to be controlled, exploited, and denied. And once time becomes the battlefield, the future stops being uncertain, it becomes contested. Now, this is the part where it stops sounding conspiratorial and starts sounding uncomfortable. And none of this is secret. OODA loops are taught everywhere. But when you step back, you realize modern power isn't about strength, it's about tempo. It's like chess, where one player gets 3 moves before the other one even sees the board. That's not cheating, it's just devastating. The file that changed the language. This is where things stop being abstract and start showing up on paper. Not a single secret document stamped time weapon, nothing that dramatic. Instead, it's a pattern, a quiet shift in language across defense research papers, strategy frameworks, and military-funded studies over the last few decades. In these documents, time isn't treated as a backdrop, it's treated as a resource. Delay becomes vulnerability, speed becomes protection, prediction becomes power. Defense research agencies like DARPA begin talking openly about anticipatory systems, tools designed not just to react to threats, but to model them before they fully form. Predictive analysis, behavioral forecasting. Decision engines that simulate thousands of futures and highlight the one that needs action now. The wording is careful, bureaucratic, almost boring, but the implication is radical. Time stops being neutral. It becomes something you can optimize, compress, and deny to others. Something you can move through faster than your opponent. Something you can arrive early inside. In this framework, you don't wait for events. You pre-position yourself where events are statistically likely to occur. And not because you're guessing, but because your systems believe they already know. And this is where the language quietly changes from response to anticipation, from strategy to timing, from planning to arrival. You don't need to change the future if you can arrive there first. And this is the part where I always have to slow down and say, none of this is sci-fi. And predictive systems are real. Militaries use them openly. But when you stack all of this language together, it starts sounding less like planning and more like time management on a global scale. It's not what should we do anymore. It's when do we already know we'll do it. From prediction to preaction. Once you build systems that predict outcomes, something subtle happens. Prediction stops being passive. Modern AI systems don't just model what might occur. They assign probabilities. They rank futures. They flag timelines that require intervention sooner rather than later. And when the decisions are made based on those forecasts, action begins to slide forward in time. Threats are addressed before they fully exist. Responses are triggered before causes are visible. Events are shaped by the expectation that they were going to happen anyway. At that point, prediction stops describing reality and starts shaping it. And this is where the line between foresight and preaction blurs. If a system predicts instability and action is taken to prevent it, did the prediction save the future or force it? If a decision is made because an outcome was deemed inevitable, was it ever inevitable at all? Military thinkers don't frame this philosophically. They frame it operationally. Time management replaces strategy. You're not reacting to events, you're managing probabilities across time. And here's the unsettling part. Once institutions begin acting on predicted futures, the present becomes a formality, a brief checkpoint between modeling and execution. The future doesn't arrive naturally anymore, it's escorted. At some point, the question stops being what will happen and becomes what are we allowing to happen and when. Now, this is where it gets uncomfortable fast. Once decisions are justified by prediction, accountability gets weird. You can always say, the data told us this was coming. This is also the moment people usually think of the movie Minority Report. Pre-crime, arrests before anything happens. And yeah, the comparison isn't wrong. But here's the uncomfortable part. You don't need physics for that future to exist. You just need enough data, enough confidence in the model, and the authority to act early. At that point, you're no longer forecasting reality. You're participating in its construction. You're deciding which futures are allowed to happen. That's a lot of power for a spreadsheet. The quiet consequences. Step back from the doctrine for a moment, and something unsettling comes into focus. If institutions are operating ahead of public time, then everyone else is living behind it. Decisions don't feel debated anymore. They arrive fully formed. Policies appear suddenly. Narratives lock in before questions are even asked. By the time most people hear about an event, the response has already been planned, rehearsed, and executed. This creates what some analysts quietly call temporal asymmetry. Some actors live closer to the future than others. They see possibilities earlier. They react sooner. They move while the rest of the world is still orientating itself to what just happened. And from the outside, that feels like inevitability, like momentum, like history choosing a direction on its own. But maybe it's not history. Maybe it's timing. Think about information shocks, moments when something major breaks and the official response seems oddly prepared, or suddenly shifts that feel already settled before public discussion even begins. That strange sensation that you're catching up to, something that's been underway for a while. If time is being managed operationally, then the real power isn't in secrecy, it's in sequencing. Who knows first? Who moves first? Who decides when everyone else is allowed to know? And that raises a fringe but unavoidable implication. Maybe the most classified material isn't weapons or technology at all. Maybe it's timing. Now, this is the part where people usually say that's just how governments work. And sure, some of it is. But when everything starts feeling pre-decided, it messes with your sense of agency. It's like showing up to a convention that already ended. You're not wrong, you're just late. And you didn't choose to be. You're not late. You are behind. Here's the quiet refrain. Time wasn't reclassified publicly. There was no announcement, no headline, no vote. It was reclassified operationally. Modern power isn't about controlling territory anymore. It's about controlling tempo, managing anticipation, owning the moment before it arrives. If you can move earlier, you don't need to move louder. If you can decide sooner, you don't need to explain later. And if you can shape the timeline, outcomes start to look natural, inevitable, unavoidable. Funny thing is, this is usually where sci-fi imagines flashing warnings and dramatic interventions. But in the real version, nothing stops you, no alarms go off. The future just gets quietly managed, and everyone else calls it hindsight. That's the real shift, not time travel, not rewriting history, just living slightly ahead of everyone else. And if time is treated like a weapon now, then most of us aren't living in the present at all. We're living in the aftermath. Reacting to decisions made somewhere else, earlier, by people operating on a clock we never see. By the time the moment reaches us, it's already been processed, optimized, and acted upon. So, if things feel faster lately, less stable, more sudden, it might not be because time itself is accelerating. It might be because someone else is already there. Yeah, and honestly, that's the creepiest part. Not that time is controlled, but that it doesn't have to be. You don't need sci-fi to outrun people. You just need to decide first. And most of us never even see the starting line. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this one. And thank you so much for becoming a member. I'm hoping it will help the channel survive the algorithm storm. I really do appreciate it. Thank you. And let me know in the chat what videos you would like to see next time. All right, my special friends, stay safe, and until next time, stay curious.